Hey guys, my name's Abigail. I'm a hairstylist and salon suite owner, and I want to take you along how I created this look. Because my guest is pretty dark naturally, we want to get that impact from the lift. I'm going to be using Schwarzkopf Blonde Me Lightener with 20 volume. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you know everything else on here is my go-to. I'm going to be using the Airtouch technique on this guest. Because she has textured hair, she has a good amount of baby hairs, and we're going to use those to our advantage. I'm starting the application in the back first so that if these foils finish processing before I'm done with everything else, I can easily pull them out. The first foil I'm taking is right off her hairline in the back. It's a 1/2 inch section, and I'm weaving out 50% of the hair and keeping 50% of the hair in my hands. From here, I'm holding the end of that section with even tension and then blow drying all the extra baby hairs down. In your hand, you should be left with only the longest, strongest hairs to lighten. I love using my coup board to apply foils on the back of the head and around the hairline, so instead of painting against nothing or your hand, you have a really clean surface to work on. I'm applying the lightener to the mid shaft of her new growth first and then feathering up to the top of the foil, but I'm not feathering down because she has a really clean line of where her blonde stops. If I feather down into that blonde, then I run the risk of overlapping and overprocessing the hair. And you can see with the end of my tail comb, I just push the blonde pieces out of that foil so I don't fold it up onto the lightener I just put in. As a part of the hairline face frame in the back, I'm going to take a section about 1 inch higher than that one, but this time I'm going to weave off the top of this section. I would consider this weave a little thicker than the first one I took, and I'm making sure to pick up both sides of her hairline on the left and right in this section. And I'm going to hold it out 90 degrees from her head and then blow dry. That way I'm not blow drying into the last foil I did, and I can make sure to get all of the baby hairs out of the way. When you're utilizing this technique, make sure the first thing you do is to turn down the heat on your blow dryer all the way. While you're experimenting with this technique and getting comfortable with it, you can change the speed of your blow dryer as well, but once you get more comfortable with it, then you can set it to high to get the baby hairs out of the way as fast as possible. I'm using Framar's Big Daddy brushes for this application because as I move up the back of the head and around the crown, I'm going to be taking pretty wide sections, and I want to cover as much ground as possible as fast as possible. You can see by this guest's grow out, she doesn't love being blonde, blonde, blonde everywhere, so as I move up the back of the head, I'm going to be maintaining a lot of depth and skipping pretty big sections. And of course, only take sections as big as you're comfortable with. On certain heads and certain head shapes, it would be better at this time to split the hair into 2 and take 2 different sections, but I was comfortable just taking 1. After this section, I'm going to be moving up to the crown and detailing that split in her part where your hair can separate sometimes. My guest parts her hair around the center most of the time, so I'm going to be taking her section off the center of her head. I created a V section at the crown, and then I'm taking micro slices off the bottom of it. You can see here as I'm painting, I'm not painting a straight line straight up to her scalp, and I'm starting to create angles. If you paint in V's and W's while you move up towards the top of the head and towards the face, it creates a really natural look by eliminating all harsh lines. Once I establish those 2 foils, then I'm going to be going up horizontally through that V section we left out before. And like I said, be mindful of your guest's natural part and where their hair wants to swirl in the back. You can kind of let go of the section that you're holding and give it a little slack so you can see where it wants to part naturally to determine where you paint. As I move to the top of her head to avoid blow drying myself directly in the face, I'm going to switch to blow drying all the baby hairs away from me. Because this guest loves her color so super duper natural, these sections are going to be super tiny around the top of her head. So I am taking slices small enough to look natural, but I'm taking enough slices for there to be an impact. I'm continuing this application until I reach the other subsection I made that is right behind her ears to the top of her head. Once I start working on the front, I'm going to apply the face frame first so we can make sure that gets lightest and brightest. And because she has textured hair and a lot of baby hairs around her face also, I'm going to be taking a 1/2 inch slice off of her hairline, blow drying all the baby hairs out of the way, and then foiling that all together. I want to note, as I'm feathering the lightener up towards the top of the foil, I'm not feathering up the saturation at all. I'm keeping it fully saturated in V and W patterns. I am taking another 1/2 inch slice directly behind that one and feathering up the lightener again, this time not as close to the top of the foil. It's important when working around the face to make sure you're holding the hair out from the head 90 degrees so you're not blow drying directly in your guest's face. This guest was a really good candidate for the Airtouch technique. She likes something super lived in and super natural, and we've done teasy lights in the past, but with how fine her hair is, it tangles up super easy and you're not able to get as close to the scalp with teasy lights. This is not necessarily a technique I would do on someone with coarse, thick, straight, long hair, because a lot of times they don't have enough baby hairs or shorter hairs to support it. And this technique is a godsend for anyone who is tender-headed, like myself, who cringes at the thought of brushing out a million teases like this. It saves your guest's scalp, it saves your shoulder from having to brush out all those teases, and it saves a ton of time in the shampoo bowl. Doing a retouch on this application is easy as well, because as you can see, once you pick up the hair and blow dry all those baby hairs out of the way, you can see exactly where you painted last time and where to retouch. And like I said, because we like maintaining depth, I'm going to be applying just a few foils around her hairline and then leaving that pocket of dark right above her ear. As we get into this top section, because we're dealing with a lot of postpartum new growth, I'm going to be keeping a lot of tension to make my sections super clean. Be intentional taking this section off the hairline, because we know they're the most fragile and they get the most attention from hot tools. You never want to over process anything, so make sure you're picking up only the longest, strongest hairs. I think this is super important for your guests' comfort. You can see that swish right there. I'm using the end of my tail comb to push the hairs that I blow dried out away from her face, so they're not just tickling her face under those foils. So I took one slice off the top hairline and then I took a medium weave right behind it. Now, if those baby hairs that you just blow dried are getting in your way, you can always use hairspray to blow them back, or you can clip them with a little clip before you start applying. And just like with the sides, this one I'm still feathering up but leaving a little more space at the top of the foil. Moving to the center top of her head, I'm going to be taking horizontal sections and I'm only going to be putting a few foils on either side of her part. Same thing as the back, tiny micro slices, blow drying everything out of the way, and then applying with a lot of tension. I'm taking 1/2 inch subsections as I move up her head, and I'm being mindful of where her part normally lays so that if it gravitates towards one side or another, it looks perfect no matter where it falls. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm the queen of teasy lights. Like, I love me a good teasy light. It's all I did before I found out about this technique. But for my guests who are more tender-headed or who do have more fragile hair that we're working with, I like using this technique. So instead of spinning her around and working from the bottom to the top again, I'm going to do the opposite, starting at the top. So these top 2 foils working right off of her hairline, process at the same speed. So when I say micro slices, it's going to be a slice, so you're not weaving anything, but it is going to be the tiniest baby slice you've taken in your life. I'm talking, I literally want your slice to be a few strands thick. And you can get totally different looks based on where you're holding your hand as you're blow drying that slice you just took, but that's a whole nother video for another day. I want to see the most dimension with these slices I picked up, so that's why I'm holding the section all the way at the bottom. I would highly recommend a blow dryer with a concentrator for this method. It keeps everything super clean and sections super easy. This guest loves all the sunshiny gold in her hair, so I toned her with 9G from Redken Shades EQ for the full 20 minutes on damp hair. After her tone, we went through and applied a full Brazilian blowout. Remember, a Brazilian blowout is a smoothing treatment and not a straightening treatment. So we love her natural texture and we wanted to maintain it. She just wanted to get rid of all the frizz when she air dries her hair naturally. And because we're maintaining her texture, I set my flat iron at 380 degrees and I flat ironed 4 to 5 times per 1/2 inch section. We did a little trim and look at how beautiful this came out. We were both obsessed with it. I hope you guys learned something from this video. Let me know what else you want to see and I'll catch you on the next one.